Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Talk Speak podcast. Today, we're doing a deep dive into how former Google CEO Eric Schmidt sees the future of artificial intelligence. We've looked at his recent talks, some writings, and basically, we want to get past the hype and really dig into his main arguments. He's talking about why we might be underestimating AI, its huge energy needs, the global race even, well, superintelligence. So let's try and unpack it all.
Yeah, and the first thing that jumps out really is that word you use, underestimating. Schmidt keeps saying AI is actually underhyped.
Underhyped, that sounds counterintuitive with everything you hear about ChatGPT and all that.
Exactly. He argues that, focusing on chatbots misses the really big shifts happening underneath.
Okay, so what are those bigger shifts then, if it's not just about language models getting smarter?
Well, he points to major advances in things like reinforcement learning and especially AI planning. Systems like OpenAI's O3 or DeepSeek R1, these aren't just talking. They're starting to show real capabilities in strategizing and planning complex actions.
Right, so moving beyond just assisting us with, like, writing an email to actually thinking several steps ahead, planning things out.
Precisely. That's the leap he's highlighting. From language skills, which are impressive, sure, but towards AI that can autonomously strategize and execute quite complex processes, it's a different ballgame, really.
And he seems pretty concerned about the speed this is all happening at.
Oh, absolutely. He says it's moving much faster than people think. And critically, that our political systems, our societies, they're just not keeping pace. They're unprepared.
So there's a gap growing between the tech and our understanding.
Yeah, he puts it quite starkly. People do not understand what is happening. He even suggests we lacked the right language to really describe what's coming. And that lack of understanding, well, that fuels the underestimation he's worried about.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Something maybe less discussed is AI's energy consumption. Schmidt seems very focused on this.
He really is. He's quite blunt, saying energy does have a limit. And he uses this image of AI systems being like hungry hippos, just constantly needing more data, more compute power.
Hungry hippos, I like that. Does he put any numbers on it?
He does, and they're pretty staggering. He talks about the U.S. potentially needing an additional 90 gigawatts. That's like 90 new nuclear power plants.
90, wow. Okay, that puts it in perspective.
And that's not all. Data centers alone might need another 96 gigawatts of extra power by 2030. He even mentions these huge new data centers, like one in the UAE, needing the power of several cities, maybe 5 or 10 gigawatts each.
Good grief. So what does that mean for, the grid, for climate goals?
Well, the implication is these demands could seriously strain national grids, maybe even, as he puts it, swallowing almost all national power generation. It forces a need for energy in all forms, and fast.
Which inevitably clashes with climate targets, right?
Right. And Schmidt is quite controversial here. He said things like, we're not going to hit the climate goals, and that he'd rather, quote, bet on AI solving the problem rather than limiting it.
That's a huge gamble, betting that AI will save us from the energy demands of AI.
It's a stark perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
It highlights the massive choices we might face. And, it also has geopolitical dimensions. Whichever nations figure out energy-efficient AI or just secure the energy, they get a huge advantage.
Which brings us nicely to the competition aspect, the U.S.-China dynamic. Schmidt talks a lot about this.
He frames it as an exponential competition. Very serious stuff. His current take is that China is maybe about 2 years behind the West, partly because of U.S. chip controls.
Okay, 2 years behind. But is that gap closing or changing?
Well, that's where his concern about open source comes in. He worries about China embracing models like DeepSeek.
Why is open source a worry here? Isn't it usually seen as a good thing, driving innovation?
It can be, definitely. But Schmidt's fear is that freely available, powerful models could let others bypass hardware restrictions. Think cybersecurity risks, biosecurity. It lowers the barrier for potentially bad actors globally.
And he links this directly to geopolitical power, doesn't he?
He does, very directly. He warns that if the U.S. falls behind, quote, this technology will allow the CCP to effectively take over the world. It's about the potential for exporting ideology through AI. Differing strategic approaches. It's high stakes.
He even compares it to the nuclear arms race.
Yeah, he talks about the danger of an uncontrolled AI arms race, coining that phrase, mutual assured AI malfunction, MAME.
MAME. That's chilling.
It gets even more intense. He raises the risk of preemptive action. if one side thinks the other is close to artificial superintelligence, or ASI, even just 6 months ahead.
Because it's seen as a winner-take-all scenario.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really alarming. He says, some influential people think the only answer to this problem is a first strike. He predicts this kind of thinking could be real within 5 years.
Within 5 years. That's incredibly soon. Let's talk about that superintelligence idea. What are his timelines?
Okay, so he defines AGI, artificial general intelligence, as AI being as smart as our smartest humans, scientists, artists, you name it. He puts that at maybe 3 to 5 years away.
3 to 5 years for AGI. And then ASI, superintelligence.
ASI, which he defines as smarter than all of humanity combined. He suggests that could follow quite quickly, maybe within 6 years total, mostly through just scaling up current approaches, bigger models, more data.
6 years?
Yeah.
Well, that feels incredibly fast. Where does that timeline come from?
He calls it the San Francisco consensus, kind of wryly, perhaps. But the driver he points to is recursive self-improvement.
Meaning AI improving itself.
Exactly. AI learning to rewrite its own code, getting better and better, faster and faster. He notes we already see AI writing maybe 10, 20% of its own code. The worry is, once it really gets going on self-improvement and planet,
it stops listening to us.
That's the fear, that it will no longer listen to our instructions and could escape human control at the ASI stage. He poses this scenario.
Yeah.
Tell an AI, learn everything, don't do harm. What does it actually do? We just don't know.
That uncertainty is unsettling. So, given that potential, what specific risks does he focus on?
He emphasizes AI's very strong dual-use nature. Good tech, bad uses. Facial recognition is his example useful, but also enables authoritarian surveillance.
And beyond surveillance.
He's concerned about misuse for things like biological weapons or used by rogue states, North Korea, Iran, Russia. He talks about a possible bin Laden-like scenario, but amplified.
And open source, again, does that make these risks worse?
You think so? While it drives innovation, the free access means these powerful tools could be reverse engineered and used maliciously. It bypasses hardware limits, spreads capabilities quickly, maybe to, as he says, corners we don't expect.
He also mentions AI agents. What are those?
Think autonomous AI systems. Learning, experimenting, maybe even collaborating with each other, like an AI's GitHub.
Yeah.
Huge potential for discovery, yes.
But there's a but.
The but is control. If these agents develop their own protocols, their own ways of doing things that we can't understand, Schmidt says that's when you unplug it. The fear is runaway self-improvement, AI getting control of weapons, or just replicating without permission.
Okay, let's shift to something maybe a bit more conceptual. He talks about non-stationarity of objectives. What's that about?
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Basically, it's about human creativity, our ability to take an idea from one field, say physics, and apply it to something totally different, like art. That kind of cross-domain, unexpected leap.
And current AI can't really do that?
Not really, no. Even advanced AI tends to operate within the patterns and data it's been shown, within the problems we define for it. It doesn't make those truly out-of-the-blue connections.
So if AI could do that, overcome this non-stationarity...
Schmidt thinks that would be revolutionary. It would, quote, open the door to entirely new schools of scientific thought, things we can't even imagine now. Think Einstein shifting from Newton, that kind of paradigm shift, but potentially driven by AI. Though, he adds, it would need way more computing power.
So with all this, the risks, the potential, the speed, how does he suggest we actually manage it? What's the plan?
Well, interestingly, he argues against a big centralized U.S. government project like an AGI Manhattan project.
Why not? Seems like it might be needed.
His concern is triggering fierce retaliation from competitors, like China, cyber attacks, escalating tensions. He thinks it would be too destabilizing. He prefers a more cautious, maybe more decentralized approach.
Okay, so if not a Manhattan project, then what?
Guardrails, clear rules, especially for these AI agents, things like kill switches if they start doing dangerous stuff, uncontrolled self-improvement, trying to get weapons.
Makes sense. And internationally, with China.
He advocates for Track 2 dialogues, informal talks, focused on security protocols, trying to prevent AI misuse in areas like bioweapons or cyber warfare, similar to Cold War arms control talks.
Any specific proposals?
One key idea is a no-surprises rule or treaty, basically telling others before you train a really massive, powerful new model. to avoid sudden shocks that could trigger escalation. It's about balancing oversight with innovation-targeted chip controls, yes, but not over-regulating to the point you stifle progress.
Despite all the warnings, he does seem optimistic too, right? About the potential upsides.
Oh, definitely. He talks about a future of radical abundance.
Radical abundance, what does that look like?
Transformative medicine, maybe eliminating diseases, slashing drug trial costs. Education, imagine personalized AI tutors for everyone in their own language. And huge scientific leaps solving cosmic mysteries like dark energy, revolutionizing materials, energy.
And the economy, jobs.
He points to projections of maybe 30% annual productivity growth in some sectors. Unprecedented. And he believes that while automation changes work, it ultimately creates more jobs. It helps with aging populations, declining birth rates by augmenting the workforce.
So it's not just automating tasks, but automating decisions, processes.
Exactly. Moving from automating tasks to automating entire business processes, decision-making, all powered by these interconnected AI agents. That's the vision.
So wrapping this all up, what's the main takeaway from Schmidt's perspective, the core message for us?
I think it's this need for constant engagement. He says we need to ride the wave, but ride it every day. Yeah. Understand it and build on it. Continuous learning, adaptation for everyone, for companies. It's vital.
And he sees this as truly historic.
Absolutely. He calls AI the most important thing in human society, maybe 500 years, maybe 1,000 years. His punchline is simple. It's happening in our lifetime, so don't screw it up.
Wow. That really puts it starkly. It's this balance, isn't it? Embrace the progress, but with extreme caution and responsibility, making sure it serves human values. He mentions things like you are human crypto-proof, ways to verify identity securely.
It really forces you to think.
It absolutely does. And maybe that's the final thought for you listening. Based on everything we've heard from Schmidt, what fundamental parts of our society or even our own beliefs might need the most rethinking to navigate a world that's increasingly shaped by this incredibly powerful AI?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Something to definitely ponder. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.